This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Mark Nelson. Oomphel in the Sky by H. Beam Piper. Part 2. His parents hadn't been of the left-wing Adelaide clique. His mother had been a biochemist, his father a roving news correspondent who had drifted into trading with the natives and made a fortune in kefagum before the chemists on Terra had found out how to synthesize hopkinsine. When the biocrystals were discovered and the plantation started, the government attitude was set. Biocrystal culture is just sordid money-grubbing. The real business of the colony is to promote the betterment of the natives, as defined in University of Adelaide terms. That's to say, convert them into ersatz Terrans. You know why General Maith ordered the Chinoon rounded up? Travis made a face. Governor-General Kovac insisted on it. General Maith thought that a few minor concessions would help him on his main objective, which was keeping us swarming from starting out here. Yes, the Commissioner of Native Welfare wanted that done, mainly at the urging of the Director of Economic, Educational, and Technical Assistance. The EETA crowd don't like Chinoon. They have been trying, ever since their agency was set up, to undermine and destroy their influence with the natives. This looked like a good chance to get rid of some of them. Travis nodded. Yes. And as soon as the disturbances in Blue Lake started, the constabulary started rounding them up there, too, and at the evacuee cantonments. They got about 50 of them, mostly from the cantonments east of the city. The natives brought in from the flooded Tidewater area. They just dumped the lot of them onto us. We have them penned up in a lorry hangar on the military reservation now. He turned to Gonzalez. How many do you think you'll gather up out here, General? He asked. I'd say about 150 when we have them all. Travis groaned. We can't keep all of them in that hangar, and we don't have anywhere else. Sometimes a new idea sneaked up on Miles, rubbing against him and purring like a cat. Sometimes one hit him like a sledgehammer. This one just seemed to grow inside him. Fox, you know, I have the top 3 floors of the Suzukami building. About 500 hours ago, I leased the 4th and 5th floors directly below. I haven't done anything with them yet. They're just as they were when transport imports moved out. There are ample water, light, power, air conditioning, and toilet facilities, and they can be sealed off completely from the rest of the building. If General Maith's agreeable, I'll take his Chinoon off his hands. What in blazes will you do with them? Try a little experiment in psychological warfare. At minimum, we may get a little better insight into why these natives think the last hot time is coming. At best, we may be able to stop the whole thing and get them quieted down again. Even the minimum's worth trying for, Travis said. What do you have in mind, Miles? I mean, what procedure? Well, I'm not quite sure yet. That was a lie. He was very sure. He didn't think it was quite time to be specific, though. I'll have to size up my material a little before I decide on what to do with it. Whatever happens, it won't hurt the Chinoon, and it won't make any more trouble than arresting them has made already. I'm sure we can learn something from them, at least. Travis nodded. General Maith is very much impressed with your grasp of native psychology, he said. What happened out here this morning was exactly as you predicted. Whatever my recommendation's worth, you have it. Can you trust your native driver to take your car back to Blue Lake alone? Yes, of course. Then suppose you ride in with me in my car. We'll talk about it on the way in, and go see General Maith at once. Blue Lake was peaceful as they flew in over it, but it was an uneasy peace. They began running into military contragravity 20 miles beyond the open farmlands. They were the chlorophyll green of Terran vegetation, and the natives at work in the fields were being watched by more military and police vehicles. The carniculture plants, where Terran-type animal tissue was grown in nutrient vats, were even more heavily guarded, and the native city was being patrolled from above, and the streets were empty, even of the hordes of native children who usually played in them. The Terran city had no streets. Its dwellers moved about on contragravity, and tall buildings rose singly or in clumps among the landing stage residences and the green transplanted trees. There was a triple wire fence around it, the inner one masked by vines and the middle one electrified, with warning lights on. Even a government dedicated to the betterment of the natives and unwilling to order military action against them was, it appeared, unwilling to take too many chances. Major General Dennis Maith, the Federation Army commander on Quanon, was considerably more willing to find a temporary home for his witch doctors, now numbering close to 200. He did insist that they be kept under military guard, and on assigning his aide, Captain Travis, to cooperate on the project. Beyond that, he gave Miles a free hand. Miles and Travis got very little rest in the next 10 hours. A half company of engineer troops was also kept busy, as were a number of Quanon planet-wide news technicians and some Terran and native mechanics borrowed from different private business concerns in the city. Even the most guarded hints of what he had in mind were enough to get this last cooperation. He had been running a news service in Blue Lake long enough to have the confidence of the business people. He tried, as far as possible, to keep any intimation of what was going on from the government house. That, unfortunately, hadn't been far enough. He found out that when General Maith was on his screen in the middle of the work on the 4th and 5th floors of the Suzukami building. "The Governor-General just screened me," Maith said. "He's in a tizzy about our Shunoon. Claims that keeping them in the Suzukami building will endanger the whole Terran city." Is that the best he can do? Well, that's rubbish, and he knows it. There are less than 200 of them. I have them on the 5th floor, 20 stories above the ground, and the floors completely sealed off from the floor below. They can't get out, and I have tanks of sleep gas all over the place which can be opened either individually or altogether from a switch on the 4th floor, where your sepoys are quartered. I know, Mr. Gilbert. I screen-viewed the whole installation. I've seen regular maximum security prisons that would be easier to get out of. Governor-General Kovac is not objecting personally. He has been pressured into it by his native welfare government within the government. They don't know what I'm doing with those Shunoon, but whatever it is, they're afraid of it. Well, for the present, May said, I think I'm holding them off. The civil government doesn't want the responsibility of keeping them in custody. I refuse to assume responsibility for them if they were kept anywhere else, and Kovac simply won't consider releasing them, so that leaves things as they are. I did have to make one compromise, though. That didn't sound good. It sounded less so when Maith continued. They insisted on having one of their people at the Suzukami building as an observer. I had to grant that. That's going to mean trouble. Oh, I shouldn't think so. The observer will observe, and nothing else. She will take no part in anything you're doing, and will voice no objections, and will not interrupt anything you are saying to the Shunoon. I was quite firm on that, and the Governor-General agreed completely. She? Yes, a Miss Edith Shaw. Do you know anything about her? I've met her a few times, cocktail parties and so on. She was young enough and new enough to Quanon not to have a completely indurated mind. On the other hand, she was EETA, which was bad, and had a master's in sociography from Adelaide, which was worse. When can I look for her? Well, the Governor-General's going to screen me and find out when you'll have the Shunoon on hand. Doesn't want to talk to